Welcome everybody to our Teaching with Technology Brown Bag, recording your own course content. I'm pleased to introduce today Mr. Brandon Henry, who is an instructional systems specialist and our task lead at the Education and Technology Innovation Support Office, or ETI for short, of our technical team. We also have Mr. Michael Gallagher, who is the medical illustrator for the ETI.
Thanks, Dina. Welcome everyone to our presentation on best practices for recording at home. In today's digital age, more and more people are recording their own projects in the comfort of their own home or in their office. And while recording on your own can be a great way to save money and have more control over the recording process, it can also be challenging to achieve, high quality results. So in this presentation, what we're going to do, we're going to cover the basics to get you started with home recording. You can see our learning objectives here. Take a moment to look at those. And whether you are a complete beginner or have some experience with recording, this presentation will provide you with some tips and tricks that you need to take your recordings to the next level. So let's get started. Most of us are not professional YouTubers with an elaborate home setup, a studio setup or whatever, and that's okay. We might do a recording a few times a year, maybe, even once a year, and we're not expecting anyone to run out and remodel a room specifically for the recording. The key here, as you see, is on a limited space and budget, and I might add a third, time. We all have very limited time for what we're doing, so let's try to do this as simply as we can. Now, we're going to split this presentation into two sections, video and audio. I'm going to talk about some tips for video to consider when you're on camera, and then Mike is going to take over and talk about ways to improve your audio for your presentation. So let's start with location. Simple locations are good. If you're in kind of a tight area, maybe your desk or your workspace is tucked in a corner or up against a wall, a plain background with minimal items can be just as effective to present your content as like a really nice studio. But ideally, we want to have a clean and organized space behind us. So you can see here on this image, I've got a bunch of things on my wall. It's kind of distracting. Clean that up, and you've got a nice space to work with. Once you declutter, it helps really focus on you. So if you're in front of a white or a solid wall, you also want to try to wear a contrasting color from the wall. So if you're in front of white, you don't really want to wear a white shirt. And if you can, if it's possible to pull your desk out away from the wall, if you can add a little bit of space between yourself and the wall, that will help reduce some of those distracting shadows that might be cast on the wall directly behind you. Now, if you find that you're absolutely unable to clean up or get away from the wall, you could always try to use some of the built-in virtual backgrounds. But I would suggest that when you do that, you try to find a background that matches the lighting color and intensity of your room. So the more light you can kind of project on yourself, the better the results will be. So you can see here, I've got two examples, two different backgrounds that kind of match my office space. Some might be a little darker, some might be a little lighter. If you can find something that looks like you fit in there, that's the best way to go. Now, as I mentioned, if you do have a little bit more room behind you, you want to kind of clean up your space and get rid of the clutter, and that will help your video look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So if you've got, some things that you can doctor it up, if you have a plain couch behind you, perhaps you could put like a nice colored pillow or a throw blanket on there. If you're in front of a bookshelf, just make sure it's kind of organized and not overflowing with tchotchkes. So in this image, you can see I have some things here behind me that are very distracting. When I clean that up, it helps frame me in the picture a little bit better. So if I jump backwards to that, just to show the before and after, getting rid of all of that clutter in the back also helps create like a silhouette of me, of a person, rather than just a big clump of kind of darkness behind there. Lighting's real important with video. One of the things you can do is if you have sort of a big window in your office or in your home, You can move your desk or your table or something to record on next to that window and use that as natural light. You may have to rotate kind of around the room to see which angle works best with your camera. One thing to caveat that though is you want to be careful though where the sun is. So if the sun is, bright in the sky or shining right into your window, that can cause a problem. That can cause you to overexpose your video and create hotspots, or what you see in this image, a washed out kind of white area with no detail. You want to try to avoid that as much as possible. You want to control the light as much as you can. And if you need to, you can get some extra lighting. They have all kinds of different little desktop and laptop light kits that you can get now. These are just a couple of example pictures of the types of lights that you can use with your laptop. And if you are experimenting with lamps, try them out in different areas of the room to see how it lights you in that particular area. Adding what's called pools of light. So you can see in the background here, I have a lamp. It's kind of creating a pool of light in the background, and that helps to add depth to the room that you're in. If you can, try to avoid direct overhead lights because those tend to create harsh shadows under your nose and under your eyes. And if you can't avoid the direct overhead lights, one of those light kits might help because that can help soften the shadows on your face. You can always use your computer camera or a cell phone if you're just trying to figure out areas of your house to find a spot to record in. You can, take a selfie with your cell phone, and that kind of gives you an idea how the light reacts in different areas of your house. Now, in addition to lighting, your camera setup is important. Most of us have laptops that we will be recording from, and when you put your laptop on your desk and look at it from where you're sitting, you get kind of the up the nose shot, and we want to try to avoid that. So what you can do is raise your laptop up, either put a box or some books under it, and try to get that camera right about where your nose is. That will give a bit more of a professional look to your video. So you can see here I've raised up that camera, and now it's pointed right at me, and it kind of looks a little bit more like I'm talking to someone rather than looking down on someone. You also want to dress for the camera. Now, just because you're recording at home, you have to consider that certain patterns and things, colors on show up differently on cameras. Solid colors with some highlights work well. You want to contrast your clothing with the background. Like I said before, no white shirt on a white wall. You kind of want to avoid stripes and tight patterns because those tend to vibrate on camera. Also, pastel colors are, they tend to wash out skin tones. And so if you can use bright, like jewel type colors, like a ruby, emerald, sapphire, those kind of colors, most of those go really well with many different types of skin tones. And then again, you want to make sure that it kind of contrasts with the background that you have. Last thing I'm going to talk about is you want to have a quiet space. What you can do is, as you're considering areas to set up your recording, sit and listen for a little bit. See if there's a fan going or traffic outside or workers. You want to make sure that you have a quiet space to record. And try not to wear loose jewelry, like jingly jewelry that can get picked up on the microphone, because the microphones will pick up any kind of rattling and jingling. And with that subtle transition, I will turn it over to Mike to discuss audio.
Thank you, Brandon. Imagine sitting and watching and listening to a presentation. What happens when the audio drops, or there's feedback or a bad connection? Imagine people talking, cell phones buzzing, construction outside. When we record at home, all these things can happen, contributing to a poor recording. Good news is they can be controlled or minimized, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'd like to start by discussing what happens when audio is bad. It increases audience cognitive load. Learners focus all their attention and energy on trying to hear or understand what is being said. Because of this, the learner's ability to absorb, retain, or understand the material you are presenting is greatly diminished. In your presentation, the goal should be to make learning as easy as possible. Research on poor audio has shown that poor audio has an effect on learners' perception of a presentation's content. Studies have found poor audio reduces the credibility of the presentation, and learners are more skeptical of the material. Some motivation for producing good audio include increasing learner retention. Learners focus on learning material and not interpreting or deciphering what is being said. Good audio also establishes credibility. It makes you sound like the professional that you are. It also shows you value the content and your audience. Good production sets an example also of what professional presentation expectations are. Today, we're going to look at 4 major variables of good audio production in greater detail. These include environment, equipment, presentation, and you, the presenter. Environment is where you are doing your recording, the room in which you're recording. In any room, echo is the biggest challenge and is often a major factor when it comes to bad audio. An ideal room is a sound absorbing room. Think living room, bedroom, or den. These spaces are often carpeted, there's drapes or curtains, and it's an enclosed space, and sometimes there's even a door. Poor spaces include kitchens or rooms with bare floors. In these spaces, echo is very noticeable. Here's an extreme recording environment, which is your closet, but it's a small private space with sound absorbing clothes. Shown here is Ira Glass from NPR recording a podcast. Zooming in further in the environment, your desk plays an instrumental role, believe it or not. In a typical home setup, the computer is often elevated and to the side. Why is this not good for audio recording? Well, it increases echo. Elevated mics pick up all sounds from all directions. There's no absorption. If you're using a built-in mic, the computer is also out of alignment with the audio source, you. So how do you resolve this? You move the computer to a solid surface, your desk, and you center yourself to the computer or the computer to you. One way to reduce surface echo on the desk is to use a blanket or towel on the surface that your computer is resting on. For more advanced echo reduction, drape a towel behind your computer. Another important environmental concern is ambient noise or background noise. You want your space as quiet as possible. Eliminate external noises, distractions, and interruptions. A do not disturb sign is a good idea. Beware of outside noises, traffic, sirens, lawn care, pets, kids, music, even HVAC. Be sure your phones are silent and that there's no alerts on your computer. Nighttime is a good time to record, generally because it's pretty quiet. Another important factor in environment is your own comfort. Use a comfortable chair that you can sit up straight in. If you're standing, be careful of movement and shifting your weight. This can affect the sound. Next, we're going to discuss equipment, starting with the recording device, your computer. Beware that audio might sound different depending on the computer software you are recording with. If you plan on using an external mic, know where audio inputs are and what kind of inputs are compatible with your system. Explore options with system sound settings, meaning the correct volume or position, which I'll talk about next. For this demonstration, we are using a USys managed machine on Windows 10. This will change somewhat with Windows 11, but the concept is the same. To get to sound settings, the easiest way is to use your search bar and type in sound, or you can go directly in System Settings, as shown here, and find sound on your menu. When you click sound, you should see in the white area, input is highlighted. There you can select the mic you plan to use from your dropdown. If it isn't listed in the dropdown, it might not be plugged in. To test the mic, you use the sound waves. Use troubleshooting if there are problems. You still have problems, you want to go to advanced options. And this might be an easier way of selecting and troubleshooting as well. So in advanced options, here is the settings menu. At the top of the menu is system settings. This is global settings, where you can select your input and your output. At the bottom of the menu is for specific applications. If you see the app that you are recording with here, you should make sure the correct input is selected. Let's now talk about mics. As mentioned earlier, know where your computer mic is. Built-in mics are often found on the top of the laptop. Built-in mics are easiest to use but have the lowest sound quality. They pick up a lot of environmental noise and echo. A headset is also a recording option. Usys issues them, or you can get your own. Their quality is variable, though. They can also make you sound like an air traffic controller because the mic is so close to your mouth, it'll pick up sounds like breathing. Earbuds are a good option based on quality and cost. These are the same kind that you plug into your phone, but can be plugged into inputs on your computer. It's possible to achieve decent results with inexpensive earbuds around $20. Earbuds have noise canceling qualities, which isolates your voice, making them a good choice. A warning though, when using earbuds, hold the mic or the wire away from your body. The wire movement on your body creates noise, and this will be picked up in the recording. An external mic is also an option. It's more expensive, but good quality can be found for under $100 or less. Consider an external mic if you plan on doing many recordings or you seek a high level of quality. Check for system compatibility and inputs before purchasing. When using an external mic, it's best to keep a distance of 6 to 12 inches from the microphone. A good way to estimate this distance is to make a fist and extend your thumb and pinky, as shown in this picture. Phones can also be used for recording audio. Phones have built-in mics with noise canceling, which produces good sound. Its downside is it's hard to match audio to a presentation if that's the objective. This requires post-production skills if you're adding it into the presentation. If you're just recording audio, such as a podcast, this is a great option. The next variable I'm going to discuss is the actual presentation or the content. Be sure it's complete. Be sure you are comfortable with and knowledgeable of the material. Make sure that there's no loose ends in the presentation. And remember, ad libs increase the chances for mistakes. Be organized. Be sure the presentation and slides are organized and in the correct order. Verify that all the buttons and transitions are working correctly. And verify that nothing is missing from your presentation. Know the software. Know the tool, which is the software you are presenting or recording with, whether it's Google Meets, Teams, or Panopto. Know where the presentation buttons are for forward and back. Know how to start, stop, and pause a recording, and then know where the recording will be saved. Lastly, we recommend that you chunk your material. What do we mean by this? Well, for those of you familiar with the ETI, we are big advocates of chunking material. Break your large presentation down into smaller, manageable parts. Chunking is good for you, your presentation, and your audience. For you, smaller chunks allow you to take a break from recording. It allows you to rest and gather your thoughts. For your presentation, chunking breaks the presentation into manageable, organized sections. For your audience, chunking creates learning breaks that help the learners better absorb material and take some rest when needed. We are now at the last variable in recording, you, the presenter. What do we suggest to help you as a presenter? Well, we always suggest practice. The quality of your presentation is most directly related to the quality of your preparation. Rarely will you have difficulties in your presentation due to being overprepared. Know your material, know where the difficult passages are, and make them easy through practice. Pre-game. What I mean by this is pre-recording. Here are some tips to help you before you record. Be in the right headspace. Enthusiasm is great and helps engage the audience. Do some vocal warm-ups that help for enunciation. And don't be hurried or rushed in your recording. Be sure to take breaks. Create or plan recording breaks in the presentation, often through chunking material, so you can rest, hydrate, and keep your vocal cords smooth. Some additional tips include recording your session in one day or on the same day if possible. Vocals can vary from day to day, and dedicating a day to record ensures consistency. Use editing as a tool. We are not going to address specific software in this presentation because each package is unique, but it's very helpful to learn basic editing skills. If something goes wrong, like you flub a line, a wrong click in the presentation, retake from the end of the last good segment and edit as needed. For those that use this, Panopto has some very simple editing tools that will cover your basic needs. For more advanced editing assistance, you can contact the ETI for help. We also recommend recording a dry run. Set aside time to experiment with all that has been covered here: your environment, your equipment, the presentation, and the presenter. Using trial and error, dial it in to the point that you have the right setup that meets your needs. Once the right setup is found, be sure to take notes of what works: mics, positions, software, and settings. This will take some time, but is worth the investment. One of the things they say in filmmaking is that as long as you have good audio, you can chalk bad video up to a stylistic choice. But if you have a great picture with poor audio, it just becomes a bad audio project. Thank you.
Thank you for watching today's Teaching with Technology Brown Bag session. You can view all Teaching with Technology Brown Bags on the USU YouTube channel under the full ETI playlist. Have a nice day.